I am not going to speak for Albemarle. I think if you take the top 4 lithium companies, they're the worst operator. Hands down. Sorry, guys.
Why is that?
What have they done well operationally? They bought into Greenbushes. They don't operate Greenbushes. They don't have a skill set to operate a mining. They haven't done mining since 1982. Ganfeng got to a certain size. They realized, okay, we got to be basic. We just can't keep buying scrap and recycle streams from people. We can't be who we want to be and do that. So they bought into Mount Marion. And what did they get rewarded with? 4%. What did that do to their throughput? It's pretty much a linear relationship between 4 and 6% as to what you're able to produce. Did that hurt Minres? No. Who did it hurt? Ganfeng.
Righto, money miners, haven't we got a bloody rip snorter? Talk about the global legend of lithium, and you don't get the nickname Mr. fucking Lithium. Well, it's just Mr. Lithium for no reason. This guy is a bloody legend, and he was in town, and we had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Joe Lowry. How excited. Jeez, it was a ripper, boys.
It was. I thought we were only going to chat for 30-odd minutes.
I used were like, oh, we'll just do 10 minutes. I'm like, fucking yeah, right.
Well, it was almost impossible to actually have our schedules align in the first place. So I thought we're only going to have like 30 minutes to chat with Joe. We had to leave our own office to bloody align with his schedule, which thankfully happened. But he gave us more time than we expected, and it's wicked insight. This guy is like as proximate to the real dynamics of the lithium market as it gets. I don't want to spoil too much in the intro, Matty, because...
Mate, it was everything lithium. Companies, downstream, fucking everything. Global, Aussie, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was so bloody good. And we got to drink beer while we did it. So that was the bloody best bit, I won't lie. Right, should we just... I don't think we give a good prelude at the start. You would have caught a bit in the intro. He's nice and punchy towards some companies. He's pretty bloody... I'm glad he's saying it, not me.
Well, similar to us, he doesn't mind, being critical of company strategies, and I think people respect that, to be honest. So
imagine what we'll be like when we're 60, like him.
Well respected, or have no friends, or both.
Right. Let's rip it. Partners for today. What very pertinent, because Terra Capital, I'm sure they love a bit of lithium and love Joe Lowry. So, mate, great partners of the show. One of the great resource funds in Australia. Can I say that?
Yeah.
They're pretty good. I think they're good blokes.
Good blokes.
Since when have you asked for permission to say what you want about NAD?
That is right. Cheers, Langers and Bondi and everyone else there for supporting Money of Mine.
Thanks, Terra.
Righto, let's get into Mr. Lithium, the legend himself, Joe Lowry. Here we go. Righto, Money Miners. We're overlooking the bloody Elizabeth Quay, and we have got...
You mean it's not K?
Elizabeth K. Yeah.
That's what happens when you get an American on your podcast.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to teach this bloke how to speak into a microphone because he runs his own podcast, the Global Lithium Podcast, not GL1, the stock code. This is Joe Lithium Lowry. He's the main man and he's come all the way from America. I could say just to see us, but I would be lying.
Why wouldn't I do that?
Exactly. Mate, welcome to Money of Mine.
Thank you very much.
Bloody
I am honoured beyond measure to be here.
Well, we should be honoured to have you on our podcast, Joe. We're absolutely appreciative of you fitting in your tight schedule. Squeezing in this podcast with us. We've had to pair it with you visiting the Shores guys, so we're here in the Shores boardroom doing it as well.
So inconvenient.
Yeah. Everybody puts a bar in their boardroom,
but brilliantly there is some alcohol.
He's a friend of mine.
So, a bit of context to the money miners out there. You probably don't need an intro. Joe, Mr. Lithium Lowry, as you are known, but you run a lithium market consultancy, Global Lithium, which provides some lithium market insights and analysis to some pretty diverse clients out there. I mean, think major lithium producers, everything from long-only investors, hedge funds, even governments. You're super well known in the lithium industry for your podcast.
Don't make me blush.
Jeez, they do their homework, these boys, Joey.
And I suspect the nickname Mr. Lithium comes from the fact that not that many people would be more tenured than you when it comes to this, industry which is full of nuance. Given over 3 decades is when you sort of started here. I think what we're keen to convey to our listeners is the degree to which you have your finger on the pulse in this market, which influences a lot of the companies that we care about, and those very intricate dynamics of the lithium market, which are going to be a lot more familiar to you than they are us, and we're excited to learn from you.
So pretty much 25 of your 30 years of being in lithium have been shit. Not as good as it is.
Well, thank you for sharing.
No, the actual the lithium itself.
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
When was there other lithium booms in history, in your tenure?
Well, I mean, if you look at when I started, the lithium-ion battery didn't exist. And so I started in 1990, and it was a pretty sweet market. There were 2 of us. What's now Albemarle and what's now Livent. There was no SQM then. We made a lot of money because it was two people with a global business. The Chinese, you couldn't buy the product because it was garbage back then. And so if you look at a niche business, Post-it notes have lithium in 2 places, the yellow Post-it notes. I created a special high price for 3M back in those days because I knew they didn't care. Because, I mean, they didn't need a lot, but they were making billions of little Post-it notes. You can't make a statin anti-cholesterol without lithium chemistry. We took down a lot of money from the pharma companies, so don't get too caught up in your own narrative there about what
So you're saying Post-it notes are about to go through the roof?
No, I'm saying you missed that. You were in 2nd grade when the Post-it note
I was probably
booms.
not a bloody sparkle in my father's eye.
Well, it might have been in your mom's eye. You never know.
Yeah, what I mean, all right.
Yeah, let's be balanced about this whole.
Joe, you made a post on Twitter not too long ago which sort of stood out to me. You spoke about mainstream media having a lack of understanding when it comes to lithium. And I think the words you used were seemingly knowing less about the lithium market than the average retail investor.
Are you talking about the Sydney Morning Herald?
I am. I wasn't going to name them, but I am. I'm keen to hear from you. What are the biggest misconceptions about the lithium market that you see?
Well, that there is a lithium price.
Right.
There are a range of lithium prices. In 2023, as of the end of July, sorry about pounding on the table when I spanked my former guest for doing the same thing. The price of lithium carbonate in Japan through July is $62 a kilo on average this year. If you read what the lithium price is by everybody who just anally focuses on, I might add, the China spot price, there's this narrative of price crash. Even if you take the price crash narrative, the price is still almost 10x what it was in June of 2020, and I remember that really specifically because I had Ken Brinsden on my podcast and was just hoping he wasn't going to slit his wrists at the time because I think they were getting $350 to $370 for spodumene. Their cost was a lot higher than that. Altura had already gone out. We all know, Bald Hill had shut down 5 months after they started up, a couple of years earlier.
It was grim. The narrative was awful too. I remember JD and I started our careers around that time, and the pervasive narrative was, lithium, it's bloody number, 3 on the periodic table for a reason. There's shitloads of it everywhere, and then it just turned immediately. And then it's been a pretty insane 2021 for the commodity. But I remember that dark period was the start of my career, and it was just you couldn't get a more hated moment for lithium or a more hated commodity at that point in time.
But that goes back to the whole false narrative about how lithium price went up in 2016 and 17, so all these Aussie mines went on in response. There was no relationship between in January of 2016, Greenbushes was running. Catlin was shut in. The rest of them were gleaming their father's eyes, as you so eloquently stated a couple of minutes ago.
We're all about eloquency on this podcast.
Well, you clearly are, and that's what.
A word? I always make up words too. I have trouble with that.
That's fine.
I think that's a word. Eloquency.
It is now. It's just like irregardless was not a word when I was a child, but because it was used so much, It actually is in the dictionary now. So you may become like
force
the
it-
Noah
force it in.
Webster of WA.
I've got a bloody old page of them I could go through. Anyway,
So, Joe, on pricing specifically, we saw the first futures contract come out of China not too long ago in July, and it had a bit of a tough first day. But I'm
You
keen
mean
to
the
hear
future market that nobody really participates in?
exactly. I'm keen to sort of expand on that, and you give us a bit of a lesson on what that sort of means to the broader lithium market generally.
And you guys, may never want this one to air because, I just don't think lithium doesn't have the kind of financial instruments that I won't say commodities because lithium's not a commodity, and we can go down that path later if you'd like to. It's a specialty chemical. It doesn't behave like people will say, especially commodity market guys, it's just like uranium, it's just like iron ore, it's like neither one of those two and not like any of the other commodities out there. So for lithium to become what it needs to become for the energy transition, we're going to need financial instruments, we're going to need a reasonable way to hedge, but we don't have that now. In the futures market in China, China's CATL, who I used to advise, and BYD, who I've done business with. My first time was in 2000 when nobody had heard of BYD. I didn't know it was Build Your Dreams until later. I don't know if they created the narrative later. But I have a history with those guys, and it's just fascinating to me now how what BYD has done, but they're now trying to take control of the pricing narrative. I have no confidence in anything I hear out of a Chinese analyst anymore because they're all afraid to go against CATL and BYD. And there's punishment. I mete it out to people who get outside the narrative. So the real issue for me now is if you're going to have a futures market and you don't have the Gangfens and the Tianqis of the world participating in it, what kind of market is that? And let's give that some time. So I ascribe no importance other than a narrative importance for China. China wants to talk price down. They want price within a band like this. And
Because it benefits BYD, it benefits cattle.
BYD and CATL together, according to Sino Auto Insights, shout out to my friend Tula, they have 52% of the EV battery market. So yeah, they have some sway, and they when the price started going down, then it went too far down, and CATL had made some deals where the spot price going down too much was bad for them because they had linked everything they had to what the spot price was, and so it's an immature industry. I've been around a long time. But lithium still hasn't grown up yet, and it's going to take some time. So sorry for a long non-answer to your good question.
Well, is
That's
there
great.
another commodity you can compare it to in the cycle of where lithium's at?
You
not
will
a commodity,
never,
remember, Matty?
you will
Oh,
never,
it's not a commodity,
you will
maybe.
never, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the gleam in your dad's eye
Good
turning into
listener.
rage.
Good listener. But what could you compare it to? Like of where it's at the moment, or maybe like in history, something you could compare
okay,
it to.
so you guys are broad commodity experts. Let's just call you that.
Fucking hell.
Yeah,
That's flattering.
We're commodity students.
We're
Broad
figuring out
commodity
our
students.
if
bloody
you want to
simple.
ply me with I won't rate this wine yet, but
We're going to just release that as an individual snippet on our website. when-
Commodity
if we get-
experts,
if we
as
get
described
one.
by Mr Lithium himself.
You'll be at the bottom with a testimonial. There.
yeah, I'm a compensated spokesperson. Money of mine, and I'm going to get out of here with a T-shirt. Well, I'm probably not.
Oh, you can
but-
take mine. I'll be right. I'll get my rig out.
No, it's I think lithium's 5 years away at least from having the kind of financial instruments that give people confidence. If you go back to the last mini boom, which started at the end of 15 into 16, it's, the price ran up from under 5 to 28. I was selling a large Chinese lithium company's material, which it isn't too hard to guess who it was.
G or T?
This guy, I mean, he has a future in stand-up if he doesn't have one. No, and I just picked a price. I picked the price out of thin air. I said, the price for this stuff is $28,625. No logic, no nothing.
But they didn't.
Everybody
they didn't
paid
know
for
that.
it.
They didn't know that. They're like, this guy's done his maths on
Well,
this.
yeah, that's why you say 625. I should have said 625.96 or something like
that.
that.
Like a garage sale. Yeah.
It pretty much was. And I wouldn't, in India, they were offering me 30, 32, and I said, I don't like you guys because you're hard to deal with, so I'm not going to sell this stuff to you. So we saw that boom happen, but then the narrative, it reversed. But then you had the banks, the Morgan Stanleys and the Goldmans of the world, and yes, I will name names, came out and said, high prices fixed high prices. And I said, go back and look at when Pilbara was planned. Go back and look at when Altura was planned. It wasn't a response to a sudden spike in price. So that's just BS. I mean, look at. Are you going to have 5 new mines come on in Western Australia this year? No, you are not, because it takes too damn long. So you're going to see in the next few years the real spike in EV demand and the inability of the lithium market to respond to it. And I will say, and I've said it a couple times on social media, that I believe the average price of lithium chemicals sold in 2023, the average price, is going to be higher than 2022. It's completely counter to the narrative that you read in the press. That I read it this morning. Lithium price is down 58%. It's like, because one guy's index is down 58%.
Yeah. You mentioned the financialization you expect to sort of take 5 years. That 5-year timeline, I heard you mention that in a recent podcast interview you participated in reference to DLE. I think your words in July were that direct lithium extraction will unlock both quantity and quality because it will yield a higher quality product if properly implemented. Yet we're still 5 years away from seeing any significant impact. My question to you, Joe, is if DLE actually does pose a real risk to disrupting the cost curve of the lithium market in sort of 5 years' time, like how do you think about the kind of valuations we see today for single asset companies in the undeveloped space, which might be more than 5 years away from being in production?
Well, let me clarify the remarks I previously made about DLE, because I believe DLE will happen.
You're getting held to account for everything you've said in
well,
history
he's
today.
looking at his little tablet there. In July, you said...
They're like, oh shit, I was on the red wines that day.
There are a lot of people that think I'm anti-DLE. I mean, people will take snippets you say, pull it out of context. I don't believe you're doing that, but the promise of DLE isn't in South America, because people will say, well, like the guy from one of the DLE companies that's named after a flower, you can make it 10,000 times faster with our technology, which is abject bullshit. Once you have a pond system in steady state, the time to make the final product with DLE and ponds is exactly the same. And if you parallel building your ponds with building your plant, DLE gives you, it's not a speed thing. The real promise of DLE is in places like North America, where there's smack over brines and no ability to evaporate it. So when you start seeing the big oil companies get into it and believe they can bring their core skills to bear on producing from places which can't be done with ponds, and you are going to have higher quality. If you do DLE in South America, yeah, you'll get higher recovery rates, and you should get better quality, but nobody's cracked the nut, not just on producing actual DLE material, but on being able to re-inject it into solars. So until governments Argentinas and the Chiles of the world are saying, okay, yeah, you can do DLE and you can re-inject into the salar. You got other issues involved with implementing DLE.
Joe, on Trav's point to the cost curve in the industry, we had a chat about BHP avoiding the lithium market because they said the cost curve was not steep enough. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this reasoning for not entering the market and steering clear.
I will not speak to BHP's logic, but the cost curve's getting steeper. Lepidolite has made the cost curve very steep, especially lower grade lepidolite. If you're talking about a 0.29 with a 20-to-1 strip ratio and other environmental nasties in the toxic mix that comes out from processing it versus reasonable garden variety brine play, you get under 3,000 ex royalty versus 30 a kilo. So you got, $3 versus 30. You got a 10x delta on your cost curve. Historically, in the lithium industry, you had $1,500 a ton, and I'll go back and forth between kilos and tons, so you'll just have to bear with me because I'm an American. I'm a pounds guy. I mean, I get a lot of kudos for being an American that at least goes metric, but I always mix tons and
just
kilos.
So that lack of steepness in the cost curve, you think, is more a reflection of the immaturity of the market?
No, I believe the cost. I mean, if we're going to talk about run over rise, and you had a former cost curve that nobody was more than $2,000 or $3,000 a ton apart, and you're going to a world where the lepidolite, the lower quality lepidolite guys are at $30,000 a ton ish, versus what SQM would be $3,000 a ton ish before their usurious royalty in Chile.
Yeah,
a 10x. That's pretty steep to me. I mean, talk about other commodities because you're commodity experts.
Well,
and tell me how steep those cost curves are.
Yeah, well, I think the BHP analogy is a good one because the stepped cost curve you have in iron ore is sort of underpinned by the low grade iron ore mining that you get out of China as well, which might in some ways be analogous to the dynamics of the lepidolite cost curve. The
only reason I have problems with making the iron ore to the lithium comparison is, and I know jack shit about iron ore. Let's just stipulate that at the beginning.
Joe iron ore Lowry just doesn't have the same ring to it. It just doesn't flow. So you chose the right material or element. I didn't say commodity.
He's teachable.
No, he's not.
When you talk about uranium or you talk about iron ore, has there ever been a decade where demand for either one of those grew more than 10x?
No.
That's the difference between what you're seeing in the lithium world and what you've seen in, I won't say other commodities, because that would be me then saying lithium was a commodity. So I won't use the word. No, let's just look at the lithium market got tilted in 2020 when EV penetration went to 3%. And now you're seeing the growth this year will be what global demand was in 2018. The growth this year. I don't think you can tell me that story about anything else that you are experts on, which is a lot of things, because you guys all look like experts.
There's another snip, Matty.
And you probably, that's why you're in the middle, because you got the glasses on and you look like a super expert.
Yeah, what do we get?
The nerd.
We get termed the what is it?
The third grade cricketer.
The yuppie, the yobbo, and the nerd. But I just don't know which one's the yuppie and which one's the nerd.
I thought it was the yuppie, the third grade cricketer, and the nerd.
Oh, that was one. Another guy the other day, the yuppie, the yobbo, and the nerd. So I'm definitely the yobbo.
I'm not.
But they're both nerds because they're both smart. So
mate, you're smart too.
You're golden triangle, so you must be. So let me give me a bit of rope here, Joe. So
go ahead and hang yourself.
I hope we don't get to that stage. But look, you say we're, I guess, 5 years off some stability. Let's call it stability. As you said, you used to just make up prices and sell it to people. For lithium. That's how it is. 5 years to some stability. I guess you're predicting did I interpret what you say right? The supply isn't going to meet the demand for the EV uptake?
I don't believe that supply is going to catch up with demand in this decade. That
So
point,
you still think price certainty is about 5 years away? And
I don't think you're ever. I think what's going to happen is people are going to become comfortable with the fact the price is not going back to $400 a ton for spodumene. And what you have now is you have different people. I think maybe, well, I won't mention Aussie bank names, but there are certain Aussie banks that'll say this. It's going to be 1,500. Some people say it's going to be 2,250. Based on what? I have a slide I show, and it's the spodumene price curve out to 2030 of several banks. 4 of the 5 banks predict a continuing shortage, but they all have the spodumene price going down well below 2,000. In what universe does that make sense? If you have a growing shortage, because people don't like the idea, it's like lithium price should be 6,000 because it was for a long time. And that's just not the way it is. In 2016, everybody said, oh, $30,000 lithium will kill the battery industry. Nobody will be making EVs, game over, no energy transition. What happened? Price went to 80,000 and there were more gigawatt hours produced at that price. So most people didn't understand what the lithium impact was on an EV, the lithium price impact. They never did the calculation. They just said, oh, it can't go up that much. It's got to kill the market, and started writing about it. And then Reuters or Bloomberg or whoever, one of their guys who didn't want to do the homework, just would repeat it. And then you created a narrative that's self-fulfilling prophecy.
We had Goldman's at one point. Goldman's and Morgan's were predicting prices that were about 10%. Like, I think the Goldman's price was 10% of what Morgan's was predicting. Like, just either ends of the spectrum.
Morgan Stanley, and they're my faves because their lithium guys apparently don't talk to their EV guys, which I guess is not
Must have a
unusual
bust up
in banking circles. But you have them. They had numbers out to 2030. They say spodumene is going to go down to 1,100 a ton. Okay, let's just stipulate that happens. But they have lithium carbonate at like 8,000. We'll do the math on that. So that basically means everybody buying spodumene at 1,100 a ton is going to take a 4,000 to 5,000 ton beating on every ton of lithium chemicals they make, because it's not an exact science, but it's roughly an 8-to-1 ratio, and then add 4,500 to 5 for conversion if you're making battery quality in an inflationary environment. So how do you publish something like that? I ask you, Morgan Stanley.
So are Albemarle paying $1,900 a ton for SC6 for Liontown? Over or under? What do you reckon? When you first saw that, do you think paying too much, paying too little, looks all right?
I am not going to speak for Albemarle because
You work for them?
No, I don't. They're my
Mate,
tax
can put a
accountant's
job
in their
out-
headquarters building, but that's as close as my. Albemarle's based 25 minutes from where I live, so and I'm familiar with them. I competed with them for a long time, but I think if you take the top 4 lithium companies, they're the worst operator, hands down. Sorry, guys.
Why is that?
What have they done well operationally? They bought into Greenbushes. They don't operate Greenbushes. They don't have a skill set to operate a mining. They haven't done mining since 1982. Brine is not mining. Brine's more analogous to oil and gas than it is to mining. I don't call brine operational lithium mine. They closed their mine in Kings Mountain, North Carolina in 1982. They bought into Greenbushes. They don't operate Greenbushes. They don't operate Wodgina. So
buying
what's their mining? I mean, what's their skill set in mining?
So do you think buying 100% of a complex high tonnage underground mine is
Depends on who you let run it.
Yeah.
Well, they'll have Albemarle shirts on, but I assume it will be Liontown personnel they will retain.
Well, they've got other options, right? They could joint venture once they have 100% ownership.
Possible outcome.
Or they could just.
Get the crystal
You
ball
heard
out.
it
Get
here
the-
first.
We're turning it
On
it's
what's
not
the
a
name of your
crystal ball, it's a
podcast? Money
lithium-
of Mine. You heard it here first
It's a
on the Money
lithium
of
ball
Mine.
now. It's a lithium ball to protect the future.
Yeah.
No, and I don't have. I own Albemarle stock, and I said I would never buy it, but certain events like COVID or when Boric decided he was going to talk about nationalization and the stock price cratered, I said that's just too. I'm buying. And Albemarle has two of the best assets in the world, but they're not great operators. They had to buy a Chinese company to even get in the hydroxide game to supply Tesla because they couldn't make great product in Kings Mountain, North Carolina after getting the Obama shovel-ready money. I competed with them. I know of what I speak in that regard. Trust me or not.
So where I was going with it, when in 5 years' time, when this price does, when you say it gets to that point, what's it going to look like? Is it a spot price, is it like gold? Is it like copper, or is it what's that market look like?
I leave it to financial experts like your good selves to tell me what those outcomes are going to be.
What does it look like to you?
All I am saying is that lithium, as it becomes bigger, more significant, will mature. Financial instruments will be developed, and you'll see a world where a hedge fund who have sat on the sidelines because they just couldn't understand, what the hell's going on with this lithium thing. And let's just face facts. In 2020, the global demand was 300,000 tons. It's nothing. It will have taken 70 years for lithium demand. There's been a lithium market about 70 years to reach 1 million tons. The second 1 million tons will come in 3.5 years. So that's kind of a situation where then you'll see, okay, this is a real thing. I mean, Exxon or Chevron, or those guys weren't, if you asked them about lithium 3 years ago, they're like, what? Why would we do that?
Well, didn't Rick Rule say they couldn't spell lithium a few years ago?
I think they spelled it WASTE.
Yeah, that's it. That's what he said.
Joe, I want to ask you about going downstream. So pretty much all the operations in WA go downstream and they look at hydroxide capacity.
Big mistake.
I want to hear from you. What are the future implications of such a focus on hydroxide downstream capacity as opposed to carbonate?
All right, I'm glad you asked that question because you are clearly in the center with the glasses on, smartest guy in the room.
And a yuppie.
You're going to make me blush.
He lives near Cottesloe. Rich as fuck.
All right, so there was a false narrative created here. Notice I didn't pound on the table. I just delicately laid my hand on the table. There was a false narrative created here that said, hard rock lithium is the cheapest route to lithium hydroxide. That's true in only one case. Green bushes. Hydroxide's harder to make. It has a shelf life. And we have seen the high nickel narrative fall apart in the since Elon decided to use LFP in the Model 3. Now everybody else is kind of jumping on board. You can't have a world where you have 50% EV penetration. You have to have a price point where the average guy can afford an EV. And arguably Tesla, it was you were paying six figures for a Model S back in the day. There's a limited number of people on the planet that can do that. If you want to have ubiquitous EV adoption, you have to have a car people can afford.
I think your friends at BYD and Cattle would take a bit of responsibility for that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Elon didn't do it because, I'm Elon, I'm the smartest guy on the planet, and I bought Twitter, and I can do whatever I want to. I mean, what happened was you had the blade, and so you had sell the pack, and you had the blade happen. But Elon was smart enough to say, you know what? I can I can use this, and then I don't have to worry about cobalt from the DRC. I don't have to. My nickel problems and my cobalt problems go away. Because I think 3 smart guys can agree that you can make a lithium battery without cobalt, without nickel, but you can't make it without lithium.
Yeah. On that point of, the...
I know that's probably hard for you to internalize.
Nah, it's all right. That's the beauty about podcasts. I'll just listen to it afterwards.
On that point of, the importance of literally needing lithium, I'm kind of keen to talk a little bit about, mineral resources, a big stock in our world.
I'm a holder.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I'm not the bag man.
Got to disclose your
I'm a holder.
your
Holding on for dear life.
So, I mean, the words I think of Chris Allison, he's
The guy with the rock wins.
Guy with the rock wins, 100%. It's and you.
But the guy with the brine's better.
Right. I'm very curious about
where am I? Am I in Western Australia?
Yeah.
Is that his word? Was that Chris's words as well?
No.
No, that was my addendum.
He's a rock guy.
Because Chris and I are so close. I mean, it's like
And to be fair, we bloody love the bloke.
I have been very. If you look at what I've said about Chris Ellison over the last 3 years, it's been super positive.
Yeah.
Oh, and started with his own cash. We have that much respect for him. He's
We make
came
big rocks
from New
into small
Zealand, a
rocks.
poor boy from New Zealand.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay, I get it.
So how should a new person getting across the space think of where value is actually going to accrue along the entire kind of pipeline? Should we just believe wherever whoever can produce lithium is where the value will capture, and the downstream is will just kind of mean revert to a low margin kind of business over time because there's higher competition in those.
There'll come a day when lithium's in oversupply, but that day won't happen until you actually have a circular economy, and that's going to be a long time because what people don't understand about recycling is a new gigafactory has 30 to 40% waste for months. That's lithium that's delayed to market. And that shit show hasn't really started yet. When you get all these gigafactories that the IRA wants to fund and the Europeans want to build, you're going to have so much lithium that when people do their balances, they say, okay, supply, demand. They don't factor in the fact that new gigafactories, even when the existing operators build them, they still have pretty high rejects. But when somebody who's never done it before does it, it's going to be in that range. And yeah, it doesn't last forever, but that's when people say, oh, the lithium market's in balance. The lithium market's short when it gets over 90% capacity utilization because there's long supply chains. In a growth business, you got to build your inventory to have your paranoia inventory. And China doesn't approach it like the rest of the world does. What you saw this year, when China sees price go down, they quit buying because they think next week it's going to be cheaper. So why should I pay a dime more? And that's been that way for 20 years. The Koreans and the Japanese are going to keep a level of inventory. It might not be as high as it was back when the Japanese used to keep 8 to 9 months of lithium inventory because they were always afraid of those 2 suppliers in America aren't really very good at what they do. And what happens if there's an earthquake in the Atacama?
Joe, you touched on the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA there. I'm just to start off keen to hear whether you think the implications are overrated or underrated in the lithium
Overrated,
market.
Grossly.
Grossly.
Overrated.
Okay. Can you expand on that?
Okay. Let's look at what's happened thus far. First of all, everybody says, well, it's a game changer because all this investment's been made. Well, companies have said, we're going to do this. And I believe it's going to result in increased investment. But most of the investment's going on the battery end, the gigafactory end. I have a map in my presentation. Roughly 25 gigafactories announced in the U.S., mostly by Asian companies with partners, whether it's Ford or GM or whomever. There hasn't been a dime, not one dime, committed to resource. Now, I believe Lithium Americas will get their loan for Thacker Pass. I believe that'll happen. And you've had Albemarle get a commitment on building conversion. But you got to have the rock, as Mr. Ellison likes to say, to convert. And so if you're putting billions into the downstream and you're not putting anything in the upstream, because in the U.S. politically, people don't like mining. They, Biden came out and said, I want 50% of the cars to be EVs in 2030. And the next day, the squad, the left of the left of his party came out and said, we don't want mining here. It's like we'd rather buy oil from Venezuela, the dirtiest oil producers in the world, and we'd rather get anything mined from our friends so we don't have to have it in our backyard. Makes no sense. You're not going to be able to supply the gigafactories, because when they came out and said, oh, we're just going to get it from our partners, I said, well, why don't you talk to your Aussie friends? Because Reuters called me the next day after that statement was made, and I said, well, go look at Australia. You got names like Tanchi and Gangfen. And, Albemarle's there too. But where's Albemarle sending their stuff? Oh, China. So it's complicated. So I think the knee-jerk reaction was to say, okay, we've cracked the code here. We're gonna, this is ironic that Biden is making America great again, and we'll see. And I think the other thing, you got to look at the 2024 election, because I think if you get a Republican back in the White House, I think the IRA could get gutted, because is
Trump going for it?
I think he's the host, but I'm a guest here, and you're gonna make me talk about Trump.
We have a strict no politics rule on this podcast. Although I do.
I think that's abusive.
I see mineral resources withdrawal from China in some ways an extension of the implications of the IRA, and I know that's a downstream.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think a lot of people believe now that America's going to get back in the game. Sorry, I need to get closer to the mic.
Mate, you've actually got a nice prominent voice.
The voice will be.
You remind me of the great rugby league commentator Ray Rabs Warren. You mightn't know him, but
I don't
same
know him.
Sort of prominent voice.
But I did see South Africa versus Argentina 3 weeks ago in Buenos Aires. I will say that. And I have a lot of all-black friends, because when I was, and that's not a racial commentary here, that would be the New Zealand All Blacks. When I lived in Japan, the All Blacks that retire and moved to Japan to make real money playing club rugby.
They make shitloads over there. Dan Carter went over there.
Lived in the same building. There were some Aussies there too, but it was primarily.
It's a mining, politics, or sports podcast. I'm lost now.
No worries, boys. I'll go a bit rogue. Must be the swamp.
You know what? If you don't rein me in, I'm liable to start talking about anything. So where were we?
So
the IRA.
I
see. I hang on every word you say, buddy.
We're still on it. So going. Let's take 5 years again into the future. With this focus on downstream for the funding from the IRA, what does the downstream globally look like? Is it still so Chinese dominated, or does it start to sort of crack and become a bit more, do the Western countries get a foothold?
Good question. What I believe America should have done with the IRA is really, if you want to say we're going to try to phase China out, you do it real slowly, because the idea that you can just create China-free supply chains, not just lithium. I mean, look at everything. Why do you want to go down that road when it just ensures failure? If you want 50% EV penetration in the United States and you're really wanting ubiquitous EVs, you can't say, oh, and you have to have a free trade agreement. Well, Argentina doesn't have a free trade agreement. So you're going to say a company like Livent, whose raw material comes from Argentina and gets shipped to North Carolina and China to make hydroxide, you're going to say none of that's IRA compliant? That makes no effing sense.
You can say it here if you want, mate. You can rip it
Well,
on this
you know,
show.
I wouldn't because Robbie's over there and
to pick up on that Livent thread, and I understand you spent 23 years working at FMC Lithium.
I did, and I met a guy from Livent last night having a steak not too far from here
Oh, beautiful.
with the Allkem guys.
Oh, excellent. And I mean that merger from our kind of, we don't have proximity to the lithium market dynamics and everything, but the Livent.
Come on, don't be
Livent-
falsely humble on your own podcast.
We've got too busy being commodity experts.
The Livent Allkem merger. I mean, I'm sure Australia has a free trade agreement, which might be handy. But the other part of the rationale, which I thought is just like, are we seeing consolidation because like there's few lithium players out there, and in order to retain the sort of market dynamics that you get with fewer peers, consolidation actually provides those higher margins for longer in that space. Do you think that's the theme that will underpin these sorts of transactions, or what's really driving the consolidation?
Well, when I talk about my alma mater, when I walked out the door in 2012, last year they produced the same amount of raw material as they did when I walked out the door. Okay, so they're not like a big player now. Livent is a bit player in the lithium world, at best. Sorry, Paul. And look, at 23,000, and that's probably rounding up, metric tons of raw material production. Yeah, they've built hydroxide capacity, but they built hydroxide capacity back then when I called it the House of Cards strategy. And yes, that was due to the Netflix series. People was like, what do you mean House of Cards? I said, well, if you build 40,000 tons or 50,000 tons of hydroxide capacity, you have to make it from carbonate, and you only make 23,000 tons of LCE, and you have to use part of it for your downstream. You have to use some of it as chloride for your downstream metal business. How do you make that work? And they believed that carbonate will just be cheap. Well, that was a bad call. And so now you've got Allkem, which I advised Toyota Tsusho back when that whole investment was made in Orocobre, so I have some knowledge of the players. And they've never made a majority of their product as battery quality since they started. So you got, I used to call it the new world big four: Albemarle, SQM, Tianqi, Ganfeng, and the little two.
Yeah, the little two have joined
The
hands.
little two. Well, Livent and Allkem together were only about 35,000 tons. Look at what Ganfeng did from 2012 until now. How much has Ganfeng grown? 5x?
It's behemoth.
And Livent's the same. So you're going to say, okay, these guys are game changers. Like, they've spent a decade sleeping, but all of a sudden there's going to be all this massive synergy by taking the two weakest producers of the top 6 lithium players and combining them. I don't buy it.
Maintaining
and
relevance.
if you then say, well, wait a second, they got hard rock assets too. They got the worst hard rock asset the second worst hard rock asset in WA. And everybody that did hard rock at Livent is dead.
Yeah.
Because those guys, when I walked in the door, and I was the first guy to sell lithium commercially to the battery space. And this is back in the 90s. And those guys were my age when I was the young guy. And they're all dead now, which doesn't speak well for what my future is, but hey.
Well, I mean, you left FMC back then, but you left them and then they stopped growing. So maybe there's a cause and effect relationship there.
Well, I got fired, and I buy the guy who runs Albemarle's lithium business, and I've chronicled that well. And we're coming up on my anniversary. I got fired on September 12th, 2012, and every September 12th, I repost my blog post about, Eric pushing the organizational chart over to me and say, notice anything?
So if Mount Catlin's the second worst in WA,
I think we've spoken about the worst earlier
you
today.
did a podcast like very recently, like I think in the last 24 hours about the worst.
oh, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. You mentioned Albemarle, and we've spoken on them before, obviously in regards to the Liontown deal. I'm also keen to hear your thoughts on their M&A approach more broadly. I mean, on Liontown, they I think had 6 bids that they did. They were very keen to get that one. They've put money in PMET. What do you think of the approach?
We heard rumours that they send 34 people to fast markets.
I think it was 38.
38. Yeah.
That was the number I heard.
Yeah, they're aggressive, right?
So-
and is that aggressive?
Well, they're not aggressive. They're bureaucratic.
Right.
I mean, they have like silos. So this department sent 6 and this department sent 7. And I don't think there was like a massive strategy of like, oh, we can only send,
Yeah.
our expense budget can't tolerate too many of these lithium conferences. No, I mean, I talk smack about Albemarle fairly often, but it's only because they have so much they have so much promise, and I think they're more bureaucratic than a BHP or a Rio Tinto, but they're a much smaller company.
Jesus Christ. Won't be working there.
Well, it used to be there, and this is back in the day when people would quit Albemarle, they would message me on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I want to have coffee at Starbucks in Fort Mill, or whatever." And I always wanted to hear the stories, why people leave, because they have a huge churn on people. And yes, we are speaking frankly about the lithium industry today.
Is it pure coincidence that everything was quiet for a bit and then within a couple of days, Albemarle put the bid in for Liontown and MinRes put in the implementation deed for Bald Hill, all within 2 days?
I just think if you look at Wodgina and you look at Mount Marion, mediocre operationally at best. So they're going to bring those great skills to bear on the worst operating asset in WA. Well, go for it. And yeah, in this current environment, any crappy project's going to make money. But I can remember I sat in Primero's office in January of 2018. And you know the Primero guys, I'm sure. And shout out to Brett. He said, that's going to be the first one on. And every time they hit a milestone, he would send me a message. And they started operating quickly, and they shut down quickly too. Because it wasn't, and that's no fault of Primero. I'm not casting shade on Primero in any way. But it's just not a good asset. And it's small too. I mean, I think what you guys were talking about the numbers, I was actually getting ready to come over here when I was listening. You said 140,000 ton, that's
That was the city report.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not like a.
It's not a bloody home run, is it?
No.
Was it a mistake, in your opinion, to go after that asset?
I wouldn't say it's a mistake because you can make money on it. I mean, because I believe there's a shortage.
Yeah.
Any asset that's operating is going to make you money.
Yeah.
Are they just paying for
But I don't
majority
believe
of the
that
mill?
MinRes is going to make that a better operation.
Yeah. But at this commodity price, it works.
Will you guys quit saying commodity and I'll quit pounding on
But
it?
is it how much do you reckon was it just for the mill rather than
Because it's unencumbered by a joint venture, you mean, Matty?
Well, I still don't understand the asteroid or whatever the heck.
asteroid.
I mean,
It's complex.
it's just I don't get all the drama, and I don't spend that much time. I mean, I literally don't care about that asset, and I think okay, it's fine. In MinRes takes it into the team MinRes, they'll make money on it. Good for them. I'm a shareholder. Good for me. But it's not it's like, you had a itch, you scratched it, but it didn't change your life.
I got a curious question for you. I mean, we've talked about maybe some of the large lithium players and question some of the strategies that we've seen. Who has a lithium strategy that you really respect at the moment, Joe?
That's a good question, because it's you're seeing you have very few significant players, honestly. I mean, I don't have the numbers for last year because I just haven't gone through it, but the big four had like 72% of supply. I think Ganfeng's going to have more and more problems as time goes on, because operating in Argentina or Mali or wherever isn't like operating in China. So they're trying to grapple with this. We have to go outside and we have to be, what Xiao Shen likes to say is globalization through localization, and that's a good English expression, but it's tough for the Chinese companies to operate in the Chinese way in a place like Argentina. And I think it's easier in Africa because it's...
Yeah, they might be all right in Mali.
Well, but I just think it's... When you look at that strategy, in lithium, China has a tough row to hoe because they don't have good domestic assets, and they're having to go outside, and then they want to go outside in a country like, I'd say it's getting late. You need another beer. But you look at how they're trying to operate, and it's not easy in a country like Argentina that wants local employment, and then they come in and say, we want to bring 1,000 Chinese guys in here to do this thing, and they go batshit and say, no, you're not bringing 1,000 Chinese guys in here to build the ponds or do anything else. So you have those kind of conflicts. Where I think China has the biggest opportunity is Chile, because there's no Western company. If Borich's policy stays in effect and it says all the new assets have to have a 51% government in strategic, and nobody defines strategic, I get all that. But no Western company is going to give the Chilean government a 51% carried interest. Chinese will, because Chinese needs the material. The Chinese need the material. So, and I think China's done all the right things for China. And I think Americans whine about, the Chinese are doing this and that. We had no vision. We let our heartland get hollowed out. I mean, I watched it happen. And people that criticize China for just doing what they got to do to dominate an industry they want to dominate, I have nothing negative to say about what they've done, but I will say that they have a real challenge when they go into other parts of the world that don't want to be colonized by America or China. And I think it just makes things very difficult, and that may not have answered the question you asked, but I thought it sounded good.
Oh, mate, I reckon it sounded bloody brilliant.
Yeah. I've got one
I've never felt so fucking dumb in an interview. I'll just tell you what. Oh, mate.
It's all about market and none about mining,
Yeah,
mate.
that's right. You want to talk about underground mining? Now we're on.
Yeah. My last question for you, Joe, is just...
I want another question from the smarter guy here.
I'll
answer yours.
I agree.
Trav is without doubt the smarter one, and he's got one good rounding off one, which I'm really keen to.
Are you anybody here related to the F1 driver?
Is he distant relation?
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I can't get F1.
Oh, he
tickets,
actually is a
unfortunately.
distant
He's
relation.
like a dad's third cousin.
Oh,
He
right.
wouldn't know who I am.
Okay, but
He's the second
He's
most.
friends
Are you
with the
his-
Buffalo Bills quarterback, and I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan. So I mean, this is like a meaningful moment to me. I'll get a picture with you and send it to my wife because she's a big Josh
Are
Allen.
you in his will? You should check if he's in his will
He has
by
never,
any chance.
I've never met him.
Are you going to let us continue to digress, or are you going to rein this shit in? I mean, let's.
sports? Your most contrarian view in the lithium market, Joe?
I think they are. I mean, honestly,
Top five?
no. I mean, the narrative is it's first of all that the price never should have gotten to 80,000. That was a mistake of the Chinese panic buying. So at the time, look at what the spodumene price was at the time lithium spot went to 80,000. The cost curve was in the 40s. So they bid this up double what the cost curve would have dictated. It was stupidity on their part. So they created the monster that they've spent the last 18 months trying to fix. And all this boo-hoo-hoo, lithium prices crashed. This is the best. I mean, $30,000 lithium is a great price. And any decent project can make outsized returns at 30,000. So why the hell is the market wringing their hands? And there wasn't much volume transacted at 80,000. Let's just also stipulate that. Last year, there was more volume under 12 than at 80 because Albemarle signed a lot of bad contracts in 2020 with caps on escalation. Sorry to reveal that to the world, Albemarle. And then they spent the better part of last year trying to negotiate themselves out of it. And in some cases, they made deals that said, well, you give us some price this year, we'll give you some back next year because we got to make this thing look better because we look like idiots. And we do real conversations here, pal.
Are you trying to plug your own consulting services to try and get Albemarle to reach out to you to engage you for your expertise?
I was engaged with Albemarle at a time when my ex-boss was running their lithium business before the guy who fired me came in and became head of the deal. Now, I literally don't give a shit.
There you go. Can I rip some quick fire? I'm just going to make shit up.
Okay.
Leo Lithium down to 45% ownership, potentially 35 once.
Yeah, I listened to that podcast.
What do you think's going to happen to Leo Lithium? Just Leo Lithium now that GameFed got majority.
If you look at the way I raised the money for Kachari from GangFen to Lithium Americas. Mm-hmm. That was my deal. I introduced them. I have a great relationship with the GangFen guys historically. And they have always done, aside from a lot of the people like to shit talk, how the Chinese behave, GangFen's always been very reasonable with their partners. And I don't expect them to try to, they're not going to go over there and try to run it themselves. Because that's the thing that people don't understand. GangFen's never done a resource project. Mariana will be the first sole project that they've done. I mean, they nibbled around the edges on small assets in China that aren't going to get them where they want to go. But GangFen's been really good at partnerships. Tianqi, not so much. I mean, if you look at the personalities of the owners of those two companies, they're very different. Mm. And I've known Jiang Weiping for a long time, and I've known Li Langbing for 20 plus years. So they're cut from very different cloth, but I wouldn't think that a change in the ownership structure is. GangFen needs that to succeed, and they're not going to be the ones who affect that success. It's going to be Simon and his guys with help from, and GangFen will help them out where they can, but GangFen's not a big miner. What resource asset currently do they operate?
Is that the right answer? None?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's...
I never know what he's doing to me. He's fucking with me head. What about, do you think Albemarle are getting exposed by going big
I would never say Albemarle exposed themselves.
Oh, yeah. But
that would
buying
because I don't
paying top dollar for Liontown before
full value. You call it full value. Then they quoted full value. Yeah.
Full value before.
Okay, do you believe this is last and final?
It's stated as best and final, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nobody ever said that when they were buying a house and then came back and paid 20% more.
What are
you're
you
done.
thinking, Joe? Is it another? Do you think there's
No,
a chance
I
of
think
another
I think
party?
they've offered a fair. I don't think there's an issue with the price they've offered, and I think the fact that
Given the board's on board with this one, maybe they finally
Should
won
have
them
they? Do
over.
you reckon they should have waited before ramp up and potential issues and a lower price, or not?
I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they have some math skills in that company somewhere.
Well, I hear it's all Boston consultants, so maybe not.
What about the
What about Green Hill? I mean,
what about the Bald Hill, Mount Marion, that whole district? What do you think that region? Is there going to be MinRes consolidation of that area now that they're looking at Bald Hill? You got that whole. Is it just going to be a big MinRes sweep up?
well,
They got
If you look-
percentages in everyone.
okay, but where have they shown themselves to be operationally competent in the lithium space? Look at the product that's come out of Mount Marion. 4%? Who bore the burden for that? They laid off a huge burden on Ganfeng, and Ganfeng took it because Ganfeng didn't. When Ganfeng got to a certain size, they realized, okay, we got to be basic. We just can't keep buying scrap and recycle streams from people. We can't be who we want to be and do that. So they bought into Mount Marion. And what did they get rewarded with? 4%. What did that do to their throughput? It's pretty much a linear relationship between 4 and 6% as to what you're able to produce. Did that hurt MinRes? No. Who did it hurt? Ganfeng. So in my mind, that's a shitty partnership.
But I suppose when you say operational success, that sounds like more ore body dependent rather than operational execution, or not? Am I wrong there?
I would never say you were wrong.
You can. You can.
Well, I could and I would, but
if you kept it to yourself, I'd be devastated.
When you're wearing that green hat, man, I mean,
Is this the one you want?
no, I do not want that hat,
He sold
especially
this
not after seeing your pate, man. I'd keep that hat on.
He sold one for $200 to a fan.
Yeah, it's true. It's almost like selling lithium at 80,000. Low volume, but
Yeah, well,
slippage got there.
okay. You'll make up in margin what you lost. No, I mean, I'm just being very candid here, and that's kind of what I do. And if people don't like it, that's fine. I don't really give a shit because I'm an old guy, and they really can't hurt me.
I can't
at this
wait till
point.
they get to that point in life when I really don't give a fuck what anyone thinks. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, you're well on your way, Matty.
I reckon a few years away.
I mean, if you're gonna fart 3 more times while we're talking,
Someone has been farting while here. And I don't want to say
the one who, and you could say to me the one who smelled it dealt it, but
I reckon
that would
Joe-
not be true in this case.
Joe's farts wouldn't smell at all, I don't reckon. His shit is
No,
pure
it's
white.
like aromatherapy. No, okay, go back and did I answer your question?
Yes.
sort of.
Well, ask it again, and I'll give you a more direct answer.
All body
Do you think that MinRes can swoop up a lot of that area in with a bit of a potential underground partnership with Develop and execute on tonnages? But like, as you said, Mount Marion,
Well,
that's
let's
an
just go
ore body
back and
thing
look
with
at
the 4%.
when you got a DMS operation that has proven now, what are we in year 5 or 6? And it's going to make money. I mean, all this stuff's making money now.
Yeah.
So it's not. I mean, what I say or you say doesn't matter as long as Chris has got the rock. But Chris isn't very damn good at producing a high quality product. He produces a mediocre product. Wogen is mediocre. Mount Marion is mediocre.
What is that primarily a function of? The processing, the ore body.
Well,
the
no, I think
characteristics?
I think you have part of it's the asset itself, and part of it's the fact that it's OJT. Do you know what that means in Australia? On the job training, and Sometimes it takes time.
And
You know what?
That's
You cannot
being
release
young.
this until I leave the country. Because, well, I mean, I may have another lawsuit. I mean, I said some stuff about Vulcan, and somebody out there decided to serve me with cease and desist orders from 2 very high-priced law firms on 2 continents. Anyway.
But, okay, so how do you look at Pilgangoora then, where they're tracking now? Like, they've been through the fine-tune and there appears to be pumping out a shitload of spodumene and ramping up to 1 million tonne.
And the point there is on-the-job training is what they did there, and they got it right. And so
And
maybe...
now-
Well,
maybe at that
okay.
point when
Let's
they're killing
just
it now?
reflect back. I went up there in January of 2018, and Altura was very far ahead on the build of, it was like Dale hadn't been there very long, and I went up there, and they didn't. Ken says, okay, we'll be operating in November. And I said, wow, that would be impressive. And they were. Now they, it took, they had a ramp just like everybody else, but they did a good job.
Totally. First movers, you have to figure it out,
And they did figure it out.
Yeah.
And they got the best damn Instagram account in the lithium industry. No, but I'm a big fan of those guys, and I met Neil Biddle in Charlotte, of all places, in 2015. So I go back that far with the Pilbara guys, and I think they're a real success story. But that's not Greenbushes. I mean, that's the thing that people all talk about. WA, like it's the lithium capital of the world now. Without, you can't walk back on that. I mean, that's a fair statement. But there's only one Greenbushes. They did a great job with Pilgangoora, in my opinion, but it's not Greenbushes, because it's like you got one Atacama and you got one Greenbushes. And, we can have that debate on whether AVZ's got this. I mean, okay, put a great lithium asset in the middle of the worst frickin' place in the world with no roads and, all the problems they have, and then you can keep talking about it until you're blue in the face.
They're probably at the stage where they're just praying that God will move it.
Yeah. Well, and I think he's going to move it to New Jersey.
Yeah, there you go.
And then, Donald Trump's going to declare it, we're making America great again.
Okay, so if you got Greenbushes as the top dog, the flagship.
Well,
Pilgangoora have done a great job, Pilbara Minerals.
Yep.
Who do you think's the next up-and-comer globally that can sort of match what Pilbara Minerals did and maybe not get to Greenbushes level?
Well, and I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, because every time I talk about Lithium Americas, I think Thacker Pass is going to become, whether you call it the Greenbushes or the Atacama of sedimentary assets, it's huge. And it's going to take some time to get, it's going to be an expensive build. Everybody acknowledges that. But let's make lithium in America great again.
There we go.
Beautiful, mate. Well, this has been sensational. How's it so? I feel like a fucking idiot. Eh?
Mate, I think we
look
all
forward to
learned
listening
plenty.
back to this 5 times, and sorry to bloody insult you, Bob, and dumb questions,
think
Joe,
we'll
but
be-
these boys sort it out. It's all good.
We'll be all the wiser after we have some dinner with Joe, I reckon.
You probably should cut this in half. Because of all the
If I'm on the edit, I will, but Matty won't.
of shit I've talked about various people. But I mean, that's honestly, I think that's one of the biggest problems with the lithium industry is there's very little honest dialogue about the problems. You have an industry that's desperately needed, and you have operators that aren't great and need to get a lot better to get the industry where it needs to go.
That just sounds like the mining industry.
Okay.
It does.
I'm not
except even the
talking
bad
shit
ones
about
make money.
mining. I mean, I really
true.
do want to get out of this country alive.
Well, mate, I reckon in terms of the edit, I'm more. You want to talk underground mining, you want to talk abbreviations, FSI. Fucking send it. That's what we'll just do. We'll just chuck it up like that. Mate, it's been a bloody pleasure. Right, I think we're all probably busting for a piss since I've been on the beers. But mate, do you want to do a group hug on camera? Come on, really?
Well, I want a freaking money of mine hoodie.
Hell yeah.
Forget your already like sweat-laden T-shirt.
We'll see what we can do.
The hoodie's the way.
Appreciate your time, Joe.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, and
and
congratulations on your guys' success. Because I mean, I have heard only positive things, and I'm not going to talk shit about any of the other people out there.
Don't go and tell all those people negative shit now.
I'm not. But you were favorably compared to other commentators out there. Let me just put it that way. Well, if you get Elon on the podcast, and if you smoke weed with Elon on your podcast,
I'll
then
happily rip a few cones with Elon Musk on a piece of cake.
Okay. Anyway, thanks, guys. It was a pleasure, and you guys have really killed it. And congrats.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Joe.
Likewise
Thank
to
you.
you, Joe.
Cheers, Joe. Righto, boys. That was bloody unreal. Wish we had beer in front of us like we did there. That was bloody awesome.
Yeah.
Bloody awesome. And a good steak afterwards. So, awesome chat. What did you get out of it that you didn't think you were going to get?
Lithium's not a commodity.
Yeah, that was interesting, wasn't
That's
it?
the one. Hey, plenty of takeaways. Got to go back and listen again.
I've got to listen to it about 5 times, as I said in there. Righto. Beautiful. Thanks to all the partners, as always. K-Drill, Anytime Exploration, JP Search, Terra Capital, and Topdrill. And we got a new one coming on Monday. We'll unveil to the money miners.
Very exciting, mate.
Great
Thanks so much,
supporters
guys.
everywhere. Right. Cheers, money miners. Hootaroo.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation, and needs.